Hey, everybody. Welcome to your next episode of The New Frontier. I'm Kevin. I've got Jaron with me, and we've got an incredible guest today, and we'll talk to you all about Dan here really soon. I'll have Jaron do the intro for Dan. But really, in this episode, why you're tuning in is there's some very unique pharmacists out there that are doing things in the medical billing space and in the consulting space that you may never have come across. And Dan is one for me that I had not come across until, talking with Jaron. And I've been blown away by some of the things that he's accomplished through his career and continues to innovate. And with that, I'll pass it over to you, Jaron, to give a little more intro into Dan and what we'll talk about today.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So, as Kevin said, we've got Dan Buffington. He's a valued mentor to me and to many other pharmacists across the country. He's very established, very accomplished. He has his own practice, his own clinic that he runs in Tampa, Florida. I had the privilege of visiting him there once, and I pretty much bogged him down the entire day, and he was totally cool about it. So thanks again for joining us, Dan. It's great to have you on the show. Please give our listeners a little bit of background of what you've of your career, just a brief synopsis.
Awesome. Well, it's a pleasure and honor to be here. And I think we're all fighting for the same mission, and that's to optimize how pharmacists are utilized as clinicians to improve patient care and medication outcomes. So in my situation, I did my PharmD at Mercer University, followed by residency and fellowship at Emory University, and then a MBA also at Mercer with a healthcare focus. And as I look back, and I share with students even today, I'm teaching at University of South Florida, the Colleges of Medicine and Pharmacy. And it's ironic that I say those together because everything from the origin of my entry to pharmacy school to experiential training to postgraduate, everything I've done has been in an interdisciplinary practice mode. So that's all I know. In terms of before we had collaborative practice agreements, before we had other types of drug therapy management structures and protocol-based prescribing, everything that I've done has been with a collegial and a supportive role, and it has driven what I've done in the practice setting as well. So when I graduated pharmacy school, I was in residency and fellowship. I came out into Moffitt Cancer Center as an inpatient clinical position that incorporated clinical research, direct patient care, precepting for students. So it was a very active and vibrant practice setting. But right next to the Moffitt Cancer Center was also the University of South Florida, where I actually went for undergrad here in the Tampa Bay area. And there was invited by collegial physicians working with on an everyday basis to actually join the College of Medicine faculty. And this goes back to the early 1990s. With that, again, having had a vision of wanting to optimize, so it's really the exact same thing we're talking about today, wanting to optimize how pharmacists fit in not as necessarily a supportive role, but as a consultative specialist role. So I met with various medical specialties, with various types of healthcare practice models. And actually, the dean of the College of Medicine was at that juncture really became almost like a grandfather figure, mentor, and encouraged me to take that vision, make the leap, and actually create or emulate. And that's so really any question you ask me, and I share this routinely, is going to say, it distills down to that which a physician would do. How do you structure a practice? How do you market the services? How do you document? How do you bill? And I have found that as long as we ride that wave, share that mission of wanting to optimize patient outcomes, I'm not here to be the physician. I'm here to be a medication specialist, a pharmacologist. That is our core foundational training. Where we practice a variety of different settings, of course, it varies. So what I emulated was a medical specialty practice model. Here in the Tampa Bay area, we're in our third iteration. We're in a 5,000 square foot clinic with multiple exam rooms, a lab, conference rooms, medical library, support staff rooms. Jaron, exactly, you had the chance to visit that and see a live working model. So as we look at the diversity of what pharmacists can bring to patient care in any practice setting, we built those services into a practice model. And when you do that, I looked for what was the optimal model, and it wasn't a primary care model. What we do, and when you instill a pharmacist or inject them into primary care, great things happen.
Mm-hmm.
What I was trying to do was to take that a step further and create a consultative specialty practice. And so that's what we did. We emulated a medical specialty practice model. So we have patients who are primary to our practice, but we're not their primary care. We work with primary care. We have referrals from primary care offices, but patients can be referred, followed, and managed by us, work with primary care, specialty, health plans, indigent care programs. So we're really trying to be as agile and available across the community. And with that comes the necessity to say, well, what are you going to offer? What is it you're offering? So it includes patient consultation, clinical research trial design and management, healthcare consulting, population data and statistical data set tracking for other entities to optimize their prescribing, to improve their patient safety, to help them meet their practice metric scores. All of these things blend together into a practice model. And Jaron, as we've talked about before, and Kevin, I think the last time we got together, with that comes how do you then learn best practices from a variety of medical practice models and cope with the fact that each of those elements of what we do as a scope of services, they don't all behave the same. So the people and patients and entities find you in different pathways. So there's different level of marketing or presence and outreach. How you document and who you're accountable to varies across research, patient care, consulting. And then obviously a key one that I think we're all tuned into is how do you take each of those and from a business perspective, from an entrepreneurial perspective, which, by the way, it doesn't matter whether you're a physician, a physical therapist, a chiropractor, a pharmacist, we can keep going down the list, a dentist. Everyone has to figure out how to optimally manage, bill, and track the profitability and viability of your practice. And in doing this, as I stated in the early 90s, those were some pretty big hurdles and challenges because those hadn't been done. We were still predominantly an employee model working for someone or within another entity. So have had the opportunity to try to help pave the way by working, again, finding what's best practice in medicine, working with the AMA, Medicare, worked directly for CMS for about 5 years, supporting them, but learning how to navigate that arena. And then also with what's referred to as current procedural terminology. It's literally the backbone of healthcare billing and data tracking and metrics, and finding a way to get pharmacists identified, integrated, and at this point now, after 20 some years, a very active participant in that process. And it's just been, again, that's the ultimate of collegial activity because everyone is striving to make sure that their specialty, but everyone else is adequately and functionally represented and has the tools. We could talk about billing codes and tools that we've been able to help create there. But there's so much to talk about in such a short period of time.
You know, the one thing I'll say is, Jaron, I'm super jealous, right, buddy, that you got to go and tour through Dan's facility. I think that if I could do an impromptu request.
You need to come down and visit anytime.
Yeah, I would really like for us to have a live episode, Jaron, sometime down with Dan.
Awesome. Yeah.
I think that would be incredible to be able to walk through there. The one thing, Dan, that I think you can walk us through right here on this episode, though, is, when you're talking about developing a collegial model, and a lot of the components that you're bringing in from a specialty mindset, which I think is beautiful. And I think that we underestimate sometimes the exposure of an individual to what the environments are like compared to what they think they can become. And I think Dan had a unique perspective there from always working with these physician colleagues in such a fantastic collaborative way. But tell us this, Dan, your models that you've developed, what's the typical routes of individuals to be able to leverage the models that you're using? And how did you reroute them so now they're using Dan's models and working through your flows and systems?
Interesting question. And I would start by saying having a core entrepreneurial commitment, meaning, and we've touched on this just a minute ago in the comments, and that is that for a majority of our colleagues, we are employed in one or a variety of different models as an employee. So an intrapreneurial mindset is a starting point. The moment that you say, I am going to cut the umbilical cord, build an independent model, and be responsible and self-sufficient, takes the energy, the anxiety, and I don't mean in a bad anxiety, I mean the motivational elements to begin to identify and define what it is you're going to offer, how to reach those individuals who need that service. And we're still adding new services now. So the concept of building, I think, becomes a more fertile soil and playground or workshop when I'm not constrained to what the employer's vision or need for the role is. My goal is a community-wide, how do I hold the skills, the knowledge, and the motivation to be accessible to others and put it in a framework. So it really became, Kevin, to what you're saying is, how do I build that framework that then I have that flexibility or agility to meet the community needs in our environment. And again, when I say community, that is the Tampa Bay area, but it's also Florida and it's also nationwide, where there are some services we do that aren't even in Florida. I mean, it's literally working with Medicare, with other state government agencies on optimizing medication therapy management program designs and creating billing pathways or reimbursement pathways or 340B facilities and the auditing that takes place around pharmacy services. So I think it's that willingness to create a independent practice mindset. Now, the minute I say that, you can do amazing things inside another entity, but you have to be able to pitch those services and be accountable to manage those within that entity. And I think that I'll tell you now, we've done some amazing things. We're all still striving at a national level for provider status, and we can talk about why that is a common and evolving goal, and why maybe we haven't hit a full mark of success on that. But there's a lot you can do even if we haven't done that. But I think that one of the things we've done poorly or not effectively yet is maybe a better way to say that, and that is demonstrating the return on investment or the value statement of the services we provide.
Absolutely.
And yes, I do mean economic value and the impact we make, but I mean the clinical value. I mean the ability to support other practitioners to reduce their liability and improve their practice metrics. There are so many elements of value, but I think that is at a national level, one of our biggest challenges. And I think it should be not one organization, and I'm a member of probably all, and with a commitment to do that the whole way through my career. If people look and said, how do you do this? It's but for and through a tremendous amount of networking with colleagues around the country. But I probably pay membership dues and am active in about 20 different professional organizations.
Wow.
Now, you add that up and the number is staggering. But at the same time, I could not do what I do, be where I'm at, and continue to grow the services and the scope of what we do without that level of networking. And I, this week, I'm starting a new project with the university and am reaching out to physicians, pharmacists, colleagues around the country to assist with that. These are all people that are going to play an instrumental role, and I guarantee will be a successful achievement as a project goes, that it's going to improve pharmacy practice and pharmacy practice management. But those are all through relationships that I've gleaned through projects and organizational committee work and getting to work with people that I hold dear as friends and colleagues, but I consider this group absolute thought leaders across the industry, inside healthcare and out.
Yeah, well said. And I'm glad you mentioned anxiety, and you specified like that not a bad, but because there really is a healthy level of anxiety that you need to have as an entrepreneur at some point. And I heard a guy talking about this when he hires CIA agents. He was like, it's actually a good thing to have a CIA agent who has some anxiety because they're a little bit paranoid. They're constantly like looking and digging to find out and confirm things. And as a business owner, like having a healthy level of anxiety makes it so that I'm constantly looking for different revenue streams. So I'm not a one trick pony. I'm diversified so that I'm protected from
Exactly.
loss of business. And that's helped me significantly along the way. And so for you personally, as you've continued to build this, what are some of the mechanisms that we have today that you think are high value that you wish we had had 20, actually when you started your career about 5 or 10 years ago? What mechanisms are here now that you wish you had had when you started?
I think it might, in fact, be things that were there that I didn't appreciate. I don't really think that it's really a sense of some recent technological advance. It's really appreciating the value of relationships, of mentoring, um,
Wow.
of collaboration, and seeing the power of that unfold at point of care with patient care, or in the middle of an organizational effort for the profession. Um, it is simply a you can't do it yourself. I often joke and I tell people I did an MBA that I started during PharmD program, but was not able to finish until after, just the way they had the course curriculum aligned. And I kept waiting for the tough course. I kept waiting for the biochemistry, the organic. I kept waiting for some class that was going to be just tremendously hard, and where the value would come from. And I kept noticing a trend, and the trend throughout the MBA programs, and it wasn't unique to Mercer. It's in hindsight, it's common to all, and that is the importance of breaking people into teams and appreciating what you bring, what you don't bring, and you will glean from the other individuals, and learning to rapidly identify problems, team members, and solutions, and building a team towards success, committed towards quality and success. So I just feel like it's the earlier you can appreciate that it's not all of what you know, but how you're able to assemble a team with people that do. So in a way, I will keep coming back and say it's kind of what I said in the beginning of the practice. I didn't try to reinvent something new. I went and looked at, if I want to be a consultant practitioner and a healthcare practitioner delivering specialty services, go see how a specialist is structured, how they operate, every facet of the practice. Over those years, there's been a tremendous amount of changes in healthcare administration, with the advent of managed care, with the advent of accountable care organizations, patient-centered medical homes, now value-based service modeling. All of these things are cutting edge, not just to us, but to medicine.
Mhm.
So finding a way that we show a common need to support each other through that, and learning from various team members. Some of the people that have been, I'm going to say, maybe the most detrimental has been the medical billing community. The most difficult for achieving success and rapid growth has been medical billing specialists.
Wow.
I can see that.
At the same time, because we were perceived as new, emerging, untested territory and a
Yeah.
headache to their normal caseload.
Yep, exactly.
I will now tell you that the opposite has been true as well. Some of the most valuable colleagues are individuals at a local and a national organization level who are medical billing specialists, who we've been able to enlighten, engage, and educate them on what we do, and have received a tremendous amount of support and collegial engagement with that community. So it really is the same message each time, finding where the shortcomings and challenges are, and going in a collaborative, collegial manner, and benefiting from the mentoring or the growth or the support that we all bring to the same model. So, and I think that's a very key issue now in value-based billing. Some people will say that fee-for-service billing is gone. The answer is it will never go away. It works best for specialists, but there are times when we have to, just like physicians, have a foot in fee-for-service and a foot in value-based. And bundled services. So we are, I think, at a crossroads, at a juncture for pharmacists in the profession to learn how to integrate and position ourselves into value-based billing models with other practitioners. So again, staying current and sharing the same concerns on how to emerge through changing approaches, whether it's electronic health record documentation, whether it's credentialing, whether it's medical billing models. All of those things you have to stay current on, and that comes most or best through the collaboration with others that are not just like us.
You know, the new frontier kind of component, Dan, it seems like you've been on the frontier for a while and have pushed the old Oregon Trail across to the coast. But the one piece that I think is an interesting bridge you had to cross there, and you mentioned as being maybe a major pain point identified, right, is that medical billing community. Can you give our audience a little bit more of a backstory there on what were the major issues they had with incorporating pharmacists into the fray, and why were they resistant initially, and how did you overcome that?
So I've had the opportunity and the benefit to come into a wide variety of practice settings, hospital settings, helping medium and large hospitals develop clinical pharmacist team models and finding ways to engage the billing community and develop reimbursement pathways. But the same thing for community and ambulatory practice, long-term care practice. There's certain twists or nuances in each of those that they have their own kind of culture and platform for billing. In doing that, almost universally, I can give you examples of several large hospitals was doing a C-suite presentation, trying to explain the what we do, who we are, and at the table was a tremendous amount of opposition or apprehension by the coding staff to having full caseloads and not being available to help us as new and emerging practitioners, or in that case, new and emerging billers for our services. In every one of those presentations, I really can't remember when I got to finish. It was the C-suite staff who looked over. You think that's the folks who are going to give you the hardest challenge. And they said, oh, so what you're saying is instead of us using pharmacists as direct employees solely to manage medications in the pharmacy, if you're actively working with patients and collaborating with others, you're helping to reduce our readmissions, you're helping to control our spend, manage our P&T budget, work with commercial health plans to align with the patient's pharmacy benefit upon discharge. These are all, and finding ways to even demonstrate the value of not just discharge counseling, but admission counseling. So when patients are coming into the hospital, identifying that one of the primary drivers for admissions is medication-related problems. And in many cases, historically, took forever to figure that out, and patients had extended stays for something that when you engage a pharmacist, you can accelerate identifying and resolving that problem. Same thing happens on an outpatient. Oh, and what I didn't share is that the C-suite members were like, so this is easy. It's not really rocket science. You just want to emulate how we deal with our other allied healthcare practitioners and bill for your services. And they realize, so again, this could be a whole separate podcast. They realize that the hospital cannot bill for the practitioner's service. That's got to be through a practice model. And there we go back to, since the early 90s, I've had the ability to have a structured practice model that supports that vehicle weight, just like physicians. The hospital doesn't bill for the radiologist. They bill for their films. They bill for the radiology practice bills for their consultative services using CPT codes for their intervention. The emergency medicine service, the hospital doesn't bill for the clinical services for the emergency medicine. Their emergency medicine practice does. So it's really, again, finding ways to show that we're not the first to ask this as an allied health practitioner. Others have paved the way. And at that juncture, you begin to see the tension within the billing community say, okay, but we're going to need your help. And we don't know your codes yet, and we don't know what you have access to or your documentation needs. All of that begins to dissolve quickly when you actually have another prototype of another like allied healthcare practitioner who's there. We are just not adopting the practice model mentality as fast as I think we really could.
Well said. I so far, as always, just like 10 out of 10 responses. You always, I always expect this amazing, like one direction response. And you always surprise me with the direction you go and how you talked about needing that team and how you wish that would have been something I can relate to that 100%. And having a team has made the biggest difference. Having people to rely on, to work together, to bounce ideas off of. You can't grow as a person. You can't grow as a business until you have a teamwork frame of mind and you're all working together. And, with that in mind, when you're blazing a new trail, you have your team with you. But it's also hard when you have infrastructure and healthcare systems that are designed to exclude you, so to speak. Or if you're, in my case, you're trying to build a system that literally has no software that really truly meets your specific unique need. So for you and your practice, what are some very useful and helpful software systems that have really kept you afloat and been very viable for you? For somebody who wants to build a practice.
Again, this could be a whole separate discussion because you're right. That is the core piece. And actually, the way you were describing that is, if I didn't bring that to closure, that thought earlier, that really is the takeaway from an MBA. It is that you have to find a way to integrate, collaborate, build the right team members and do that. Yeah. So it's interesting that you bring this to technology and software platforms. I will echo your point is, even to this day, I don't know of anything out there that does what I need. I am not a computer programmer, but I've gotten a lot better. And the only reason you get better is because no computer programmer, no offense to them, but reality, no computer program can write what you need unless you can express what you need to them in their vernacular.
You had to adapt. Yeah.
Had to adapt. Actually, had to, like many small businesses. I mean, you can look around us today and see small businesses that weren't there 10 and 20 years ago. So that sense of seeing a need, building a model, and sometimes having to build the tools that manage your model along with you at the same time is not unique to pharmacy. So with that, I've had the benefit of working with several great programmers, web and online, but database and practice management tools. I have a constant thirst and yearning to find a tool that is the perfect platform. I haven't seen it yet. So about 15 years ago, we started writing our own. We're actually right now redoing another iteration or version of that. And it covers what we do. We identified domains of what we do that needed to be incorporated. So a standard electronic medical record is great for the patient documentation and the scheduling, but it doesn't help with the clinical research. It doesn't help with the other types of healthcare consulting activities, and I could just keep going. So with that, we had to build tools that help to meet our needs. It's actually incredibly rewarding when you invest in that with the precision of what you want it to do, and then it becomes the platform that's helping you thrive. It can also be frustrating when you've done that and you realize you've grown past and it's time to add new arms, domains, or dimensions to what you use as a tool. But I look at electronic health records and I realize that what I just said to you is an echoed comment by physicians. An electronic medical software, outpatient or inpatient, is not perfect. And it's not necessarily everything that they need to run their practice. So again, I could go in a corner and sulk, or I can say, come on, everybody, let's get around the conference room table and design what we need. Then go find a programmer who can bring that to life, who can create a functional tool. And I don't think you're ever done developing or keeping a wish list of what you want to do. But I think it's incredibly rewarding to. So we use all the traditional drug information support tools. We use and access national drug nomenclature databases and things. But when it comes to practice management, it's essential to identify the scope of what you do and make sure that you build a tool that's around that. And I'll tell you, one of the most agile platforms, if you look at databases and application development, if I said SQL to you today, structured query language, it is the granddaddy of all databases that's scalable from small to enterprise level. I mean, giant corporations. I will also tell you that it's a platform or an environment that's riddled with programmers who one writes the table structure, another writes how you do a report, another writes how you bring it to online, another writes how you exchange and hook up with an API to another software. You'd have to hire a giant company. We've actually had great success, and I think it may not be the funnest or the sexiest thing that we talk about, but we, at an office level, we're very happy with a product called FileMaker Pro. It's multi-platform, Windows, Mac, Linux. You can integrate, design what you want very easily. There's something called rapid cycle development, and that's where you're building on the fly and having programmers help you do that. The beauty with FileMaker Pro, I'm not trying to make it a commercial. It's just been that helpful. I live in it every day. It's a design tool that everything's under one box. So every one of those components, from table structure and entities to how you generate a report to how you see data on screen, it's very user friendly. I will tell you, you will quickly grow to where you maybe need somebody who does it for a living, but that also becomes an affordable piece, because finding someone who can take your skeletal structure of what you're designing and bring it even further to a polished effect has been fast, efficient, wow, and I think affordable in our case. So I really highly, all the students who come through our clinic, I challenge them on that. And it's kind of like the adage of, you ask people, how do you know how to use Microsoft Word? Everybody nods their head. Yeah, but do you know the subtle features that I would say take you from an elementary level to a graduate level? Same thing with PowerPoint, same thing with Excel. Intro familiarity, but skill and technical prowess can be two different things. I just think that on the database side, in our profession, whether it's patient data tracking, project tracking, you have to learn to embrace databases, and it's a very user-friendly environment for that. I probably gave you too much on that. Sorry.
No, great.
That's fantastic. In fact, I was talking to a colleague the other day. He was working for a small hospital system. They moved to a large healthcare system, primarily on labor data. He was looking at, Dan and Jaron. And the amount of data he was able to extract and the amount of filtration that has to be gone through and the number of things that can be done with macros in Excel are really amazing. I mean, just absolutely incredible. And the leveraging of things like LLMs to be able to help you understand that master's level of data on how to use PowerPoint, Microsoft, any platform, file extractor, et cetera, to a higher level is really interesting to see individuals in a C-suite level using those types of tools so they can use tools to a higher level. And so why I'm saying that is this: regardless of the tool that someone deploys inside of their care setting, Dan, my question to you is this: is it always behooving of a young entrepreneur to learn that tool to the greatest degree so that they can leverage it where they can prior to going and creating their own? Or do you feel like the creation of your own tool to fit your surroundings, your settings, is really something essential to do from the very beginning?
It's interesting the way you frame the question, and I would say do not have apprehension to dive in, to embrace what is a successful tool or model. Do not set the personal aspiration to be the best at it. So it comes back to the example I used earlier. My ability in just that one tool, but there's others, in the ability to learn how that functions, but then be able to talk at an advanced level with the person that I'm passing that off to do the finished work, is an accelerant to going from idea and skeletal structure to a finished product that's making your life easier, that's ensuring better data management and quality of outcomes. And I'll tell you right now, if you can't track your revenue cycles and your billing across multiple platforms, that'll make you stay up at night. So Jaron, you used the point before that anxiety. I think there is a natural entrepreneurial anxiety that is the heat under your seat. It is what drives you to create tools to be able to best communicate, build your teams. But when you build that and you see it working with precision and making your life easier, it's as much rewarding as it is to see your team performing, as it is to see a patient with a positive outcome. Knowing that you've been able to build those tools and resources that are built unique to your practice needs.
Could not agree more. And so I have a couple of questions for you. I think are valid questions for most pharmacists who want to create their own consulting practice. First of all, do you see any value in your practice in utilizing collaborative practice agreements? Is there a real benefit there? And second of all, creating a consulting practice is not something that typically is a business you can create to be sold. So a lot of people worry about exit strategy. I know it's something that keeps me up. So A, how do you utilize collaborative practice agreements? Is there any value to them in your practice? And B, do you have an exit strategy?
So, these are all great questions. I would say, yeah, no, and they're all very timely discussions for me as well. Collaborative practice is fascinating. It is not an essential platform. And if everyone will read their state pharmacy practice acts, we're trained, designed, and integrated into the market to be able to work and counsel with patients and colleagues. You do not need a collaborative practice to do that. The minute I say that, someone will say, but look what a collaborative practice can allow you to do. And in Florida, we have two pathways. We have one that's been in place since the 80s called drug therapy management. That's in addition to everything that our collaborative practice allows me to do, and to just even then see a patient, pick up the phone and talk to the other practitioner and affect change. No practice implement tool needed. A practice agreement can add some speed and efficiency and broaden the scope of what you do. So in a drug therapy management here in Florida, it is a single agreement between the patient, the practitioner, the physician, and the pharmacist. And it does facilitate. So we were doing this long before collaborative practice terminology was in place and becoming vogue or nationally accepted. And it allows you additional laboratory ordering and monitoring and interpretation. It allows you greater flexibility of modifying or altering prescriptions in accordance with what was defined in that agreement. So if you treat that drug therapy management as a well-structured protocol, it's great. But some people said, well, but then I have to do one of those on an every patient basis. Well, that's true. That's the way it's structured. I have no problem using that tool as almost the equivalent of a referral sheet or a referral form. That with that patient relationship and with their prescriber or practitioner now allows us that connected loop to do that. A collaborative practice, at least in Florida, went a step further and said, well, an agreement between the pharmacist and the physician for all their patients. So you can see the efficiency went from one circle loop to any group of patients. So it added some enhancements. I have never felt that I needed it. I have the capacity. I have relationships with physicians that I could, at the drop of a hat, say that. But that creates additional ongoing tracking and continuing ed commitments. It's just never, if that is the desired practice model you wish to go, then many states have that, and it is a style of practice. It is not the only platform or entry point to practice. There are also many pharmacists who work directly in physician practices where you already have that capacity to either do the drug therapy management or collaborative. I chose to do a different route from the onset, and that was I wanted to be in the community to work with any physician and any patient. So not unlike if you looked in your own community and said, who are the pulmonologists? And they'll take referrals from any source or direction. That is the model what it has done, though, it has built amazing mentored and robust relationships with physician colleagues that I've worked with for 10, 20, 30 years now. And Jaron, what an amazing transition. Many of them are retiring. and at 63, as of last week, that comment of transition actually is a key issue. So again, from a business model and practice management mentality, an exit strategy is not something you think about the whole way through building and running a practice. But at some juncture, no, it could be financially motivated, saying, I'm ready to do something different. Okay, well, you're there. Or if it's a point of retirement, okay, now you're there. So you should think of that in advance. And I will just say is if you are a product volume focused practice, it's a little easier, and we can look to prototypes of how selling from one entity, the practice, to another, those models. But Jaron, you raise an interesting point. Not unlike attorneys and engineers and other professionals, dentists, chiropractors, there comes a time when the value of what people come to that business for is you. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to retire and leave the practice, if there's not another you there, then the desirability from whoever may be interested in that practice. So really, what I have found is our best model for your question is that we actually build a mindset of cultivating additional younger partners who see the value. You grow and mature them in their business management, practice management skills. And I am actually blessed right now to have one of those examples. So I'm looking at about a 5-year transition period with a younger practice partner who I will begin to let them do more of the practice management decisions, but tethered. And then also change that workload. So the volume of what I do, the degree of relationships. But here's another interesting twist. In those models, whether you look at attorneys or others, oftentimes the retirement is somewhat quiet. And the reason for that is some of the highest practice viability issues is the relationships and the presence you have in the community. And people are still calling and still reaching out because it was you. Mm-hmm. So if you say, I want to do this as a certain date and then I'm gone, it's yours, that may hurt that younger practitioner or the other practitioner who's buying. So having the ability to taper over time keeps that word of mouth and that prior experience and referral lines going strong, while that person is also making a presence and relationship with those other practitioners. So exit strategy is a little different when it's a service-based model, and the viability of that service and practice is the quality, the time, the professionalism, the commitment you put in. So picking that right next partner and also doing that transition in a manner that nurtures and coaches them, but also isn't abrupt and stops the referral lines. And I've seen that happen in medicine, and we've learned from that. And I feel like I feel very comfortable. That's not anything I'm losing sleep over. So I feel very comfortable and blessed in the direction we're going, and excited for my younger partner as well.
Wow. Yeah, I think that transitional plan is exciting to think about for young entrepreneurs like myself, just thinking, okay, that established relationship, the time you put in, the relationships that you build, the expertise you put together, like being able to pass it off to the next generation in a very step-by-step progressive type of way in a more natural process than saying, hey, here's the end date. I'm selling off the products that I previously had and the business and this and the brick and mortar that was there. I'm sure there's a lot of pressure to it when it comes to choosing the right individual, to be able to bring in. And so that was really my last question, Dan, is when building out something foundational, for you, you had a very unique idea from a lot of folks' perspective. And then you're able to build those things out based on, I've seen it work in this other setting. I'm going to alter it so it fits the needs of what I'm trying to do in the specialty pharmacology space. How have you hired over the years individuals that could fit into both the professionalism you're looking for, the clinical expertise, et cetera, so that it built upon your business, so that you could scale yourself as a human being? Because Dan, even though he's incredible, is only one man. So how do you scale that and bring in the right employees?
It is one of the toughest parts, but I'll say I'm going to stay old school to the day I'm done. I believe in networking. I believe in evaluating an individual and the feedback you'll get from others who have worked with that individual. A sample of satisfaction or accolades for their work ethic, their quality, their honesty. So I am not an online platform advocate when it comes to, a younger graduate may say, well, I put my resume on X. Well, you're not going to find it here. I'm looking at faculty members. I'm looking at colleagues. I'm looking at people saying, I know your practice is unique. I have just the right person I want to introduce you to. So it's taking a little extra time to put the energy into finding quality people. And then once they're there, the other piece is making the commitment to nurture and build them, not only in the service you need, but to where they're happy and satisfied and rewarded in what they do. I could say the same things that are important to you as a practice owner are important to them too. So it's finances, it's flexibility in time, it's responsibility to family, and the challenges that life brings you. But I will have to say that across the board, my success rate for finding quality people and building a quality team has been another blessing, and something that. And I'll take that last comment a little twisted too, or a little variation on it. I learned early on that if someone isn't happy in the role, that it's better for me to support them. I didn't say let them go.
Yeah.
But if it's their desire to go, I'm not mad. I'm not offended. It's how do I help them grow into who they want to be, whether it's with us or in something different. People have different passions. We all cross paths in different employment roles and periods of our lives. I'm going to tell you now, I stopped counting a long time ago. The number of people who I have worked with over the years, managed, hired, who have been instrumental later. I'm going to give you one right now. One of our earliest residents, when we developed a residency and fellowship program integrated into our practice model, went on, had an amazing pharmacy career, made the decision to go into med school, went to med school, made the decision that his passion was neurology. Decided then it was neurosurgery. He's been practicing as a neurosurgeon in the Tampa Bay area for years and absolutely loves and understands our commitment to neurology and psychology and the importance of understanding the impact of neurotransmitters and proper management and the challenges that can face if with abrupt changes and the healthcare consulting. He's actually likely rejoining our practice.
Wow.
I'm just going to stop and think for that a minute. The years that went into postgraduate pharmacy, medical school, residency, neurosurgery fellowship, and doing neurosurgery, only to realize that his core passions were still. So he is still going to carry a dedicated precision load of the types of work that the surgeries that he enjoys doing most and integrate with the other types of consulting and healthcare practice and forensic testimony that we do too, that's even a whole nother section is when the court systems and attorneys realize the value, I frequently say to our students, sometimes multiple times in a day, who is the highest trained pharmacology and toxicology expert in the entire healthcare field? It's us. And you can say, well, maybe it's a PhD. No, PhD is a basic science, not a clinician. In many cases, not even licensed as a healthcare professional. Very precision-focused area of study. To that, I say thank you. We benefit in our understanding at a receptor level from many of the, well, okay, so it must be the physician because they can prescribe. On average, physicians get 1 year of pharmacology, one course, maybe across 2 semesters in their entire training. Everything else is on the job and do an amazing job. But if you look at the volume of adverse drug reactions, there's a reason we still need to be positioned and integrated as a specialist to help avoid and manage those issues. The number one healthcare related tool, treatment modality in all of healthcare, not just in the US, worldwide, is medication. More frequent, more impactful than the volume of surgeries, the volume of physical therapy, the volume of dietary consultations. Now, you might say probably too many prescriptions. Okay, we would agree. So we have to elevate ourselves as that specialist in that critical position to optimize medication therapy management. At the same time, the number one healthcare related harm is adverse drug reactions. So the two go hand in hand. So we're here to optimize the number one therapeutic treatment modality, but we're also here to help try to avoid and resolve adverse drug-related problems. So in doing that, I just think it's an understatement of that motivation and that drive and that anxiety, as you tuned in on, Jaron, in that prior comment. It's also that at a 10,000 foot level, it's training our staff, training our colleagues, building that next generation of practitioners. And I really feel like at a subtle way, what we've done since the early 90s to hone, design, build, manage a practice model is what our profession needs now. We have employers, but I think our next step of evolution is when pharmacists can step away from standard traditional employment roles and build specialty practice models. And I'm literally saying, I don't care whether you're in an AmCare, a long-term care, inpatient, or in a private practice, specialty practice model. The value and the core base of our training in pharmacology and toxicology integrated together are the core value. It's not how many bottles we dispense. It's not how many Part D MTMs we check off in a time period and other issues. It's the real impact we can make for patients. And what we're missing is a larger wave of practitioners to adopt a practice model and strive to be maximized use within and across their communities.
Yeah. So Dan, it was awesome having you here. And I just want you to know, like, you are officially our first real guest on this show on the New Frontier. And I wouldn't have had it any other way. And so awesome. One of the more, compelling questions that we have as we really get this up and running is, who do you think is cooler or more attractive? Is it Kevin or is it Jaron?
Wow. I am very non-confrontational when it comes to moments like that. And Phil, remember the networking? There will be times I need Kevin and Jaron. So I'm going to go with equal.
That was vastly disappointing, but I appreciate it.
This guy's unbelievable, Dan. I got to put up with him.
It's the politician role that yes. comes out of there, which I do think those skills in an interdisciplinary practice setting, in an inpatient business model, those things do have to come through.
Yeah. Yes, well
that
played.
Diplomacy.
Appreciate it, Dan. Appreciate the diplomacy on that one. If you could only see some of the questions that Jaron teed up over here that I tried to skip over with other questions, Dan, you'd be
now I am afraid.
Exactly. But the one that he did put down that I feel like has a couple of neurons that are snapping together that I think is a good final one for us is now that you're kind of looking at, I mean, it kind of makes me sad to say this because you've done some incredible things. I'm not going to say you're retiring. You're just stepping away from the role. Then you can mentor the rest of us, through a new seat. But do you have, in Jaron's words here, do you have any outrageous predictions for the future of pharmacy?
Yes. That was very easy. The answer to that instantly came to yes. If you look at our profession across all of healthcare, the first to embrace health IT was pharmacist. I can drive you back to and tell you company names, things that we saw happen, the advent of personal computers, finding their way into pharmacies, finding their way into chain management with mainframe systems. Now, that might be a little bit of an aging example, but it's critical today. Because what I'm going to share with you is, as I look across healthcare, and you look and say, in the last 15, 20 years, we look at where IT has exploded.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, there is no central repository for medical information. In fact, Medicare, CMS, has openly said, I've been at the mic and asked, has openly said the U.S. government will not create that. How many of you have heard of Iron Mountain? Iron Mountain is truly a mountain repository for critical resources, assets, and information for the U.S. government. The concept of creating something similar, we have banking data. Mm-hmm. We have other types of financial data. Why can't we have a central repository for healthcare data? Electronic medical record platforms. We've seen some amazing evolution. No central repository. A commitment to interchangeability, to data exchange, mm-hmm. or even prompting communications. Central repository? No. We as patients and practitioners, put on your patient shoes now, would benefit from a single healthcare repository for us, data on us, that is easily accessed by the other systems. That's not what's happened. They've been proprietary platforms with hesitation to share or interchange. Remember, we were the first to embrace. So if you look now, one of our most important opportunities, which can be a PBM killer, which can be a revenue and value-based billboard, is if we as a profession create a central, transparent, cost-effective, universal pharmacy medication platform, medication profile platform, we will be the driver of what happens next. So I'll tell you, we have script, we have our Rx and different tools, but those are all transactional. They're not patient data. They're not health outcomes data. There's nothing where we go. Remember, we said earlier to look for software platforms. There's no perfect medical software platform. Matter of fact, when we open, I'll challenge everyone. Do your best to carve out time to look, sample, see demos of electronic health record software. Small, moderate, and large vendors. You'll be astonished at the sticker that they want, and you'll be dismayed at what's in it for you. And when I say that, I mean, where does your data live and how robust is it going to help you practice? You get in there and you find there's a med list with start date, stop date, who wrote it. There's an allergy field. Wait a minute. It hasn't matured since paper charts. Maybe there's a drug interaction button that uses the same tools we use on an external basis.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is our opportunity for a radical platform change is if we create, remember what I said, you can't expect the programmer to make it for you. You have to be able to articulate what you want and need.
Yep.
When we create that nonprofit, transparent, comprehensive product, transaction, and clinical repository, we will displace what PBMs do. Why would anyone go to the PBM? We will displace and become the portal that every electronic health record wants to pipe to. Why? Because I'm saying to you right now, if it's the number one healthcare treatment tool, if it's the number one healthcare related harm, what we need is a to the moment pulse point of exactly what medications a patient's on, what's their level of compliance and adherence, what is the not just an allergy or not just a drug interaction, when it occurred, who are the reference point practitioners to touch that, what was done to resolve it, was there ever any re-challenging? I can keep going. This is about a 50-point checklist that if we maintain a timely, live, and dynamic med profile, it would radically change the rest of healthcare.
Okay, so there's going to be a lot of people rooting for that. Do we need PBM transparency, or do we just need to replace them with automation?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, there's so much money nested and wrapped. I just finished a report recently that if you look at what PBMs were 20 and 30 years ago and where they fell in the business market matrix, mm-hmm. and where they are now, if you look at Fortune 500, and that there's no real service. It's an interim pipeline that finds a way to benefit from every direction of anything that portals to it. It's an amazing cash catchment tool.
Yeah.
The value and strength of those companies today is so strong that we're not going to beat them at cost. They have too much money. What we'll beat them at is relevance.
Well said.
So at the point there is no longer a need for them, they'll be out of the market.
What a fantastic way to wrap that up, Dan. I think that it really brings together the years of perspective that you've gained. I think both inside the technology space and in the practice management space, to look at an outrageous call for the future of pharmacy really being, how do we grab those reins back that we may have accidentally let drop 20 plus years ago and harness some of the skill sets we put together. And thank you everybody for joining Jaron and Dan and I for this episode. Hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you for being part of the new frontier. Click like and subscribe and all those other good things on YouTube and the other channels that we're on. And we sure look forward to seeing you guys next time. Everybody have a great night.